The explosion felt like it ripped a hole through Eddie's world. Smoke and fire filled the air, and the roar of the collapsed tunnel was a relentless, ringing echo in his ears. His body ached, but a scream pierced through the chaos louder than the ringing in his ears. "Lewis! Lewis! Answer me!" Scrambling through the rubble, Eddie's eyes locked onto a mangled hunk of steel. It used to be an armored truck. It used to hold his friend. Fear was a cold, metallic taste in his mouth. "Lewis," Eddie muttered. The lump in his throat choked off the rest of the word. Lewis had been driving, laughing about some stupid movie he'd seen the night before. Then the IED hit, and now a clawed hand shot up through the wreckage. Eddie dove forward, grabbing it before it could fall back. Lewis sputtered, blood flecking his lips. "Eddie," he rasped. His one good eye widened, then flickered past Eddie's shoulder. "Incoming!" Eddie whirled. 3 figures in desert fatigues, the insignia of some ragged rebel militia, charged from the swirling dust clouds. Eddie's rifle was buried in the wreckage. He swore, searching desperately for a weapon, any weapon. Then he saw it, glinting beneath the wreckage, an experimental prototype they'd been escorting, the Quantum Gauntlet. Experimental was putting it mildly. The damn thing might not even work. It might vaporize him the moment he touched it. His gaze flickered between Lewis's weakening grip and the weapon. Didn't seem like he had a lot of options. Cursing echoed from the approaching rebels as they saw him reaching for the gauntlet. He snatched it up, jamming his hand into its metallic maw. It hummed, the vibrations rattling up his arm. He didn't have time to think about consequences, didn't have time to read the damn manual. He aimed at the closest attacker and squeezed the trigger. The world disintegrated. 1 second, Eddie saw the sun-baked sand, the rebels running, guns raised. The next, there was a nauseating sensation of his insides being turned inside out as the world flickered in and out of focus. When his vision finally stabilized, he was somewhere else. The cracked earth had morphed into a field of green, and the sky was a swirling mass of purple and indigo clouds. The air smelled of rain and something indefinably alien. The rebels were gone. His first thought was an adrenaline-fueled rush of relief, but it quickly soured into confusion. Then a low groan dragged his attention back to the twisted truck. Lewis still lay there, pinned beneath the metal monster. But the blood was gone, and his breaths, though shallow, were steady. The relief this time was real, washing away the disorienting effects of the gauntlet. "Eddie?" Lewis whispered, his eyes blinking open. "What the hell?" "Don't try to talk," Eddie said, working to free his friend. The wreckage was lighter here, almost like brittle plastic, but it was still a fight. His arms ached with the effort. Finally, he shifted the debris enough to drag Lewis free. Lewis collapsed onto the grass, his gaze flitting around wildly. "Where in God's name are we?" he choked out. "I think..." Eddie looked up at the impossible sky. "I think we're not in Kansas anymore." Before they could make another move, there was a rustle in the tall grass. Eddie spun, the gauntlet whirring into readiness. It was heavy on his arm, its hum pulsing oddly against his skin. A creature stepped out of the foliage. It was humanoid, but taller and leaner than any human Eddie had ever seen. Its eyes were enormous and glittered with an unnerving intelligence. Instead of a mouth, tendrils quivered on its pale face. "Greetings," the creature said. Its voice wasn't precisely a voice, more like a series of melodic clicks and whistles that somehow translated to understandable English in Eddie's mind. Lewis scrambled back, eyes wide with a fear that mirrored Eddie's own. But the tendrils waved in what seemed to be a placating gesture. "No fear," the creature clicked. "We watched. The gauntlet. It fascinates us." "Watched?" Eddie's throat felt dry. "You mean you saw..." "The shifting," Yes. The creature bobbed its hairless head. Intriguing technology. Unstable. You are fortunate to survive its use. Fortunate's not how I'd describe it, Eddie muttered. He glanced at Lewis, whose breaths were coming in ragged gasps. They were stranded in some impossibly alien world with a prototype weapon that might explode at any minute, and their only company was the stuff of nightmares. The creature seemed to pick up on their unease. We apologize for frightening you. Unintended. Its tendrils quivered again. Our interest is purely scientific. So like lab rats? Lewis rasped, his voice colored with dark humor. No, no! The creature clicked frantically. We mean you no harm. Curiosity alone compels us. You are visitors from another plane. Most interesting. It cocked its head. And the gauntlet. We wish to study it. In exchange, we offer our assistance. Eddie and Lewis exchanged a silent look. There weren't many alternatives in this bizarre scenario. If these creatures could get them back home, he'd let them study the gauntlet till the cows came home. Assistance? Eddie managed to ask. Like, send us back to our world? That might be possible, the creature said, its tendrils writhing as if in thought. If we understood the device, your world, it is closed to us. The gauntlet, perhaps, it could open the way. Hope flickered in Eddie's chest. A way home, the possibility of saving Lewis. The choice, however horrifying, became clear. Okay, he said slowly. You help us. We help you study this thing. He held up his arm, staring at the glowing metal of the gauntlet. It felt like a death sentence clamped around his wrist. The creatures led them through a landscape seemingly from a fever dream. Trees with bark like molten copper shot into the sky, while bioluminescent flowers pulsed with their own internal rhythm across the forest floor. Eddie and Lewis stumbled along, supported by the slender, strong aliens. Lewis was still weak, his face pale against the vivid backdrop. If they try anything funny, Eddie muttered out of the corner of his mouth, blast them. It doesn't matter what it does to us now. Lewis just nodded grimly, a silent agreement between them. They reached the alien settlement, a cluster of smooth, dome-like structures nestled in a clearing. It shimmered with a luminescent light, otherworldly yet oddly beautiful. More of the tall, slender beings emerged, those same unnervingly large eyes trained on the pair with disquieting curiosity. Eddie kept his grip on the gauntlet firm, feeling the thrum of barely contained power. It seemed that they were poked, prodded, and observed for days. The aliens were fascinated by their biology, the technology of their uniforms and gear, and Eddie's every use of the gauntlet. Each jump sent them tumbling through a new layer of reality, each one more bizarre and unstable than the last. There was the world of liquid mountains, the one where gravity shifted every few feet, and the one populated by what appeared to be intelligent, talking clouds. Lewis's health began to improve. It seemed the various atmospheres and environments were having a strange, unintended healing effect. Still, the underlying dread didn't dissipate. They were learning, surviving, but the feeling of being lab specimens never disappeared. One evening, as a moon with vibrant rings rose in the sky, their main captor, the one who first spoke to them, whose name was a series of unpronounceable clicks they dubbed Chirp, approached. The gauntlet, Chirp said, the approximation of a human mouth oddly unnerving. We believe we understand its principles. We are preparing a ritual of sorts, to open a passage to your home. Eddie's heart pounded. Could it be true? A flicker of hope battled the ever-present wariness. And you're sure this will work? No certainty, Chirp admitted. The gauntlet is chaotic, but it is your best chance. The ritual took place in the center of the alien settlement. The creatures had carved strange, angular symbols into the ground, and the air thrummed with a nervous energy that had nothing to do with the gauntlet. Chirp stood before them, its tendrils swirling in complex patterns. The energy. We must harness it. Focus it. The doorway will be small, fleeting. You must act quickly. Okay, but what exactly do we do? Eddie asked. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but it was drowned out by the desperate need to get home. When the gate opens the gauntlet, it will react, Chirp said. You must point it at the opening. Let its power resonate with the shift. This, we believe, will stabilize the passage long enough. Stabilize. The way Chirp said the word implied anything but stability. Eddie took a steadying breath. This was probably insane, trusting a bunch of aliens who'd essentially abducted them, using a piece of tech that could just as easily vaporize them as send them home. But looking at Lewis, his color back, his face filled with a wary hope, Eddie knew there was no choice. The chanting began, a low hum that resonated in his very bones. The ground shimmered, and the air warped as if reality itself was growing thin. Like a tear in the fabric of space, a swirling vortex appeared in the center of the markings. It pulsed with a sickly green light, and the stench of ozone seared Eddie's nostrils. "No!" Chirp shrieked. Eddie raised the gauntlet. It seemed to take on a life of its own, vibrating wildly against his arm. He aimed at the center of the vortex. As he did, a wave of energy blasted out, crackling and snapping as it met the unstable opening. The vortex expanded, the green light growing blinding, and the sound of alien chanting and electrical buzzing was deafening. "Come on!" Eddie yelled at Lewis, grabbing his friend's arm. Together, they staggered towards the vortex. With each step, Eddie saw glimpses of familiar landscapes: desert sand, the broken roadway, the wreckage. Home. He shoved Lewis forward as the vortex started to flicker, its energy faltering. Lewis disappeared in a flash of blinding light. Eddie was about to follow, to finally leave this bizarre nightmare behind, when the vortex snapped shut. The silence was deafening. Chirp rushed toward him, tendrils flailing in agitation. "Incomplete!" It clicked. "The passage, unstable, could not hold." Eddie's stomach turned. "Lewis? Did he get through?" We do not know," Chirp admitted. "It is possible, but there are infinite possible destinations. He may be lost." Eddie felt like someone had punched him in the gut. Lewis, finally on the mend, finally within reach of home, and now lost in the vast expanse of the multiverse. A surge of anger bubbled up, hot and irrational. "You bastards!" he snarled, lunging for Chirp. His fingers snagged on the creature's smooth, hairless skin. "You promised to send us both back!" The other aliens moved then, their surprising strength dragging him back from Chirp. "We did not lie!" Chirp insisted. "The gauntlet's power is too wild! We could not control its reach!" Eddie thrashed in their grip, rage and despair a fiery cocktail in his veins. He wanted to hit something, to blast something, but they held him too firmly. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, he knew they were right. This was their science, their world. No, their universe. They never truly had control. Finally, the energy faded, and the aliens released him. Eddie slumped to the ground, defeat mingling with a chilling fear for Lewis. Was his friend alive? Stranded? Or something worse? When he looked up again, Chirp was staring at him, not with the detached curiosity from before, but something almost akin to sympathy. "We can try again," the alien said. "The gauntlet. It retains a trace of the passage. Perhaps if we can refine our approach." "No," Eddie said, his voice hollow. "No more experiments. You send me back, or I'll—" He didn't know what he'd do. Make good on the earlier threat, blast his way out. The gauntlet thrummed on his arm, a constant reminder of its unpredictable, deadly power. "We understand," Chirp said, the tendrils drooping slightly. "The risk is great. But you must also understand, the gauntlet is invaluable to us. We wish to keep it. In exchange, we offer knowledge, passage to other worlds within our sphere, resources, and protection." It was a strange sort of bargaining chip, the key to his potential salvation in exchange for something that might never return him home. A cage, no matter if it was made of bioluminescent flowers and alien science. "Let me think," Eddie muttered. He stood, ignoring the way the aliens tracked his every movement. He needed to find a corner of this strange world to be alone, to think about Lewis, to think about the impossible choice he now faced. Days stretched into weeks. The aliens were patient, offering him food and shelter, and even some semblance of freedom within their settlement. Yet, with every passing sunrise on this vibrant foreign world, Eddie felt the weight of his decision settling heavier on his shoulders. One night, as the ringed moon cast an eerie glow across the clearing, Eddie found himself drawn back to the ritual site. The markings on the ground faded, and a strange sense of finality settled over him. He thought about his options, endlessly replaying the scenarios, staying here, learning from the aliens, perhaps even exploring other dimensions with their help. It had a perverse appeal. Yet, the image of Lewis lost and alone was a wound that refused to heal. Home. It might be in ruins. His life, whatever was left of it, might be a never-ending struggle for survival. But it was his. Familiar. And somewhere, perhaps, there was a glimmer of hope that he could find Lewis. Hefting the gauntlet, Eddie felt its familiar thrum, the chaotic energy buzzing through his veins. It was a monstrous creation, a bringer of chaos with the slimmest promise of salvation. Closing his eyes, he aimed the gauntlet at the night sky and squeezed the trigger. The world exploded into light and sound. He tumbled through realities faster than before, fragments of impossible landscapes flashing before his eyes. A world of molten oceans, one made entirely of crystal, another where giant winged creatures soared across a blood-red sky. Then, like a swimmer breaching the surface after too long underwater, Eddie burst into blinding light and the familiar sting of desert heat. He staggered, blinking back tears as he took in the sight, the wreckage of the convoy, the familiar stretch of cracked highway, and best of all, a figure sitting with his back against a twisted hulk of metal. "Lewis!" His friend looked up, his eyes wide with startled recognition. "Eddie? How the hell?" Eddie didn't have an answer, not one that made sense anyway. He rushed forward, collapsing next to Lewis, a laugh escaping him. "Don't ever do that to me again," Lewis said, but there was a tremor in his voice. "You too, buddy," Eddie replied, feeling the gauntlet's weight on his arm, its potential, and its terrible, terrible price. The sun beat down on them, casting long shadows across the sand. Whatever the future held, a desperate race against time to decipher the gauntlet, a return to the alien world, or something else entirely. That moment was enough in the harsh beauty of their ruined home. They were together, and that was all that truly mattered for now.